Poison ivy. Welcome back to Schill Brothers Outdoors. My name is Kevin, out here in the woods doing another video about something I am super passionately hateful about. But first, click that subscribe button. Also, check out our podcast, Backcountry BSing, if you want to hear us talk about more things related to the outdoors. We have a separate YouTube channel for that, and it's also up on all podcast platforms. Check that out. Also, if you want some sick merch, we have a store. Easy way to support the channel. Check that out. So, I have been wanting to make this video for a long time. I have had, personally, massive struggles with poison ivy. Ever since middle school, I can remember getting massive inflamed poison ivy rashes. Surprisingly enough, Andy actually, I don't know if he's ever even gotten poison ivy. He might be some of the few that are immune, but I have battled with poison ivy literally throughout my entire life. So today we are going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how to identify poison ivy. We're going to talk about dealing with poison ivy. We're going to talk about how best to avoid poison ivy. And I'm going to share a lot of things I've learned throughout the years of dealing with it to hopefully make your time out in the woods better. So let's get into it. If you are unfamiliar with poison ivy, it is a vine-like plant that grows in a lot of parts of the world. The basic underlying physiology of a poison ivy rash is an allergic reaction to the plant. So the plant contains a bunch of these compounds. They're oil-based compounds. I'll put the name right here. It's urushiol. I can't pronounce it. That's an oil that's found throughout the entire plant, and what happens is when that oil binds to your skin is like, WTF, what is this? And it fights it as if it's an allergic reaction, and that's what causes this nasty, itchy rash that breaks out and destroys your skin. It is an allergic reaction. Unfortunately, right now, it is March 1st, literally, so I am in an area where there's tons of poison ivy. All the leaves are off of it, so I can't show you the plant right now. I'll be putting pictures of it up on the screen throughout this video, but what I can show you is something that most people don't realize, and that is the vine. Okay, you remember hairy vine, no friend of mine? Well, there we go. So you can see, look how thick this poison ivy vine is down in that area. So here's a poison ivy vine going all the way up this tree. See it? And then another thing to note is, this is actually grapevine right there. So that's not poison ivy. Poison ivy, or not poison ivy, poison ivy. Exhibit number 2. You can see I cut that one to kill it. Vine just going straight up that tree. And I'm in the same area about 10 feet from the last tree. And obviously it's March, you can't see it, but you'll have poison ivy leaves budding off of this on the way up. And here's another one about 10 feet from where I just was. You can see I cut that one. I don't even want to get close to this thing. Even when they're dead, obviously the oil still in there can get you. And there's another one climbing up this tree. So I'm in a little area with a bunch of pine trees, and about 50% of the trees are covered in poison ivy vines. So it really does like to take over an entire area. And lastly, before we flip back to the talking heads portion, there you go, pal. Thanks. It can be a vine, like I just showed you. It can be a shrub. It can form fruiting bodies and have little berries on it. It comes in a lot of different forms. The classic poison ivy has 3 almond-shaped leaves. Show you a picture right there. And additionally, another characteristic of poison ivy is in the fall, when the chlorophyll in the leaves dies, the leaves change color, they turn a red color. So that's another thing I've noticed. I grew up hearing this saying, leaves of 3, let it be. I also heard hairy vine, no friend of mine. Those are the 2 sayings I always heard. The problem with the leaves of 3, let it be, is there's a ton of other plants that have, triplicate groups of leaves that are not poison ivy. What we have in the United States is something called Western poison ivy. That's what you have in the Midwest and most of the country. There's also your poison oaks and your poison sumacs. I'm not going to talk that much about those because I don't have a ton of experience with poison oak and poison sumac. The vast majority of what we deal with in the United States and in the Midwest specifically is the Western style of poison ivy, which is the vine or shrub-like poison ivy. One thing about poison ivy that is helpful to know is that it does not like to grow in the light extremes. It does not like growing in areas that are full of sunlight, and likewise it does not like growing in areas where it's purely dark. It likes like a moderately exposed area. That's why you generally see it in the forest, on the forest floors, in between where light scatters in. That's where I always see it. I never see it out in fields. I never see it anywhere where it's kind of dark. I always see it in kind of like patchwork light areas. Additionally, it grows in all ranges of soil types and pHs, which sucks. You can find it, you can just find it anywhere, which is what I'm trying to get at, and I see it everywhere. I will say though, kind of an interesting note is I almost never get it backpacking. There are cases where I get it backpacking, I'll talk about that later. The vast majority of times I get poison ivy is trail running. That is by far when I get it the most, and day hiking in like some of the metro parks in Columbus. I almost never get it when I'm like deep in the woods backpacking. It's kind of interesting, although I will say the last like 5 to 6 years, the majority of our backpacking, we have stayed at campsites where a lot of people always stay, so they're kind of like rooted out. And if you're staying in an area where you're supposed to stay at designated sites that the Park Service kind of watches over, they will clear poison ivy out for you. That was a little bit about the characteristics of poison ivy, where it grows, how it grows, the different types, but let's now talk about the real point of this video, how to defend yourself against it. So first, the first and most obvious form of defense is understand how to identify it. This is something that I struggled with for years because I just never, for as much as I got it, I never really got a good hold on memorizing what it looks like. I still don't. What I have now and what I would recommend doing, if you're someone that is deathly allergic to poison ivy, go to Google Images, literally find about 10 different pictures of poison ivy, because it can look a lot different based on where it's growing and how it's growing, and save those images to your phone. What I did for years was I literally, if there was anything that even looked remotely close to poison ivy, it had those 3 almond-shaped leaves, I just avoided it, even if it wasn't poison ivy, and that was a pain. What I do now is I have about 10 pictures of poison ivy on my phone, and that has helped me really learn to identify it. And every time I see something where I think it might be poison ivy, I pull up my phone, I pull up those 10 images, and I just look at them and look at the plant, and that has always been really good. When it comes to the plant itself, the oil grows throughout the entire plant. Roots, stems, of course the leaves. So it's not just like the leaves that you have to worry about. Now I will say that the oil is generally contained within the plant, so as long as the plant's not like broken open in any way, you'll probably be okay. Now most of the time there's like, the plant is kind of like disturbed, and that's when the oil kind of cuts out of the leaves, and that's why, you know, if you brush up against it you'll get it. But the oil is found throughout the entire plant. So first line of defense is have some pictures on your phone and know what it looks like. Second line of defense when you're out backpacking is when you get to camp, do an entire survey of all the ground, especially around the base of the trees and on the trees, and just scope out the whole thing. And if there is something that even remotely you think might look like poison ivy, this is where I carry a pair of gloves. Obviously you don't want to touch it with your hands, but use gloves to remove it. Just know the second you touch it with those gloves are done. And I actually carry like a little Kroger bag, and if I have to deal with poison ivy, I'll take the gloves and put them in a bag and then wash them later. Another thing to note is the oil from poison ivy is very persistent. I have had it on socks, like camping socks, and pulled those socks out a year later and put them on and got it on my feet. It persists. You can get it on equipment and it will sit there for years. It's an oil, so it really does suck. So if you have to deal with it, know that once you touch it, and that's contaminated. Now the other thing is, it does wash out pretty easily because it is an oil. So anything like any sort of laundry detergent will do a good job of getting rid of it. So know what it looks like. Survey your camp when you get there. Kind of an obvious thing is treat it like insects. Long pants, socks. Every single time I have gotten poison ivy backpacking, like literally every single time, it's been because I wear camp shoes and my feet are exposed and I get the poison ivy on the tops of my feet. Every time, that's how I get it when I've been backpacking. So I bring socks now I can wear with my camp sandals, and if I'm doing any sort of bushwhacking or anything whatsoever, I wear long pants. So that's a very easy way to avoid it. But just know, it can be on your pants, and just assume it's on your pants. Next line of defense. Now, this has never happened to me. You know, all the times I get poison ivy, the rash takes about 24 to 48 hours to set in, so I never realizing I get it when I'm out there. But I carry camp soap. Soap is obviously, it's an incredible way to get rid of oils. Any soap is a really good surfactant and will get the oil off your skin. Here's the crappy part. If you get the oil on your skin, you have like minutes, maybe hours to get it off your skin before you're toast. You have got to get it off your skin ASAP. So I carry a little thing of camp soap just in case. If I even think I touch anything that has poison ivy when I'm out there, just soap up, give it like a couple minutes of rinse and lather and get it off you. Another really crappy thing about poison ivy is if you mistakenly end up burning it, it will get in the smoke and it will get in your lungs and your trachea, and that is a legitimate serious medical issue, and that's like super serious. So if you think I'm super anal about not touching it when I'm out backpacking, just imagine how anal I'm about it, making sure I don't burn any of it. The last line of defense is something I have used once. I've never taken it backpacking with me. I've only used it like when I'm out in the woods and I have to do some like work, and I'm just super anal, is you can get barrier or defense creams. I've used them before. I've never gotten poison ivy. The concept of the defense cream is you pre-coat yourself with it before you go out into the poison ivy. And the point is, it's gonna block the poison ivy from coming into contact with your skin. I cannot preach about the effectiveness of it. All I can say is I've used it once and I didn't get poison ivy. Whether I didn't get poison ivy because of the cream, I don't know. So those are my defense strategies. Know how to identify it, know how to avoid it, use clothes, bring soap, and maybe use defense cream if you need to. I do want to talk a little bit about what to do if you get poison ivy, because it's a huge pain to deal with, and there's some good resources but not great. So if you do get poison ivy, like I said, and most people, it takes a couple days for it to show up. The more you get it, the more sensitized you are to it and the quicker it will show up. So I usually get it within 24 hours. It forms a very characteristic rash that you're gonna just wanna scratch. It's not contagious, assuming you've showered since you got the poison ivy. People think it's contagious, it's not contagious. The only thing that has really worked for me is cortisone cream, keeping the area dry. And then if I have a really bad poison ivy, I'll throw a picture right here. Last time I got it, all over my body from actually a towel I had thrown on the ground and used after trail running to wipe my body off of sweat. Had poison ivy all over it. I had to go on Prednisone, which is a corticosteroid. It works really well. It's only used in extreme cases, but if you do have to go get medical treatment for poison ivy, they're probably gonna put you on some sort of steroid, like an oral steroid. And what that does is it blunts your body's innate immune response, so the rash doesn't get as bad. But that does work. But keep it dry. Cortisone cream. You can take Benadryl too. It is an allergic reaction. And just for the love of God, don't scratch it. Scratching it, it's gonna make the rash stay on your body longer. If you keep breaking it open, it's not gonna make the itching go away. So just try not to scratch it. Just keep it dry. Try and dry it out and put cortisone anti-itch cream if you need to on it, and just ride it out, and just please just know how to not get it in the first place, because it's such a pain in the ass. So that is it. That is my little video defense against poison ivy. Like I said, I have battled poison ivy like my entire life, and I have gotten a lot better at least at identifying it and dealing with it. But unfortunately, it's something, you know, I'm just allergic to. Some people aren't allergic to, so it's something I have to deal with for the rest of my life. So just know how to avoid it and know how to deal with it, and it won't ruin your backpacking. That is it. It is spring, it's getting nice. Let's get out in the woods. Thank you all for watching.